Morning everyone, today we're going to be tying a type of scud. It's a Lee's Flea. Basically a simple little green shrimp imitation. Just going to get the rest of my stream stuff up here. There we go. Now we're going to be tying this. You can use black. Today I'm just going to be using olive because we're going to be tying it in a light olive color. And we're just going to be using a dun olive 6/0 in uni thread. You'd want to use a non-GSP for this if you're going to be ribbing the fly with the thread, just so you don't cut into the Scudback. So a uni thread works really well for these. Very simple, great fly actually if you're learning to tie. These are one of my favorite flies to tie when I was a young kid. Hey Robert, good to have you. Valhalla. You guys are always the first ones in, like bottleneck. Robert beat you by a few seconds here, though. Good to have you both in, mate. I don't have one of these tied up, but basically it's a little green shrimp. I'm going to call the Lee's Flea. It's a simple pattern, but it's super effective. Tying up a bunch of these because they're really effective for ice fishing, which the season is on its way. You want to have a decent thread wrap for the body. I generally find doing a segmented thread wrap like this works better for me, getting everything to hold in. Everything does, eh? Editing's a pain in the butts. I'm gonna go into the bend a fair bit, so I'm gonna be about a bodkin width away from the barb there. You don't want to go too much over because your material can slide back too much. And we're using a size, what are we? This is tied normally on an 8 to 12. We're gonna jump right in the middle and do a 10. This is a 10 scud hook, heavy. Let's see, I normally also weight these. Should have probably tied this in before I did my tying. But we'll weight it on top of that thread wrap, it's not a big deal. And for weight, I'm just still using the 10/0 because that's what I got on my bench here. This is what I'd normally use for these anyway because I want a thinner lead wire. Yeah, you're saying it was a monster. I'll add a little bit of lead for these, just kind of smack in the middle. You don't need a whole lot, especially for ice fishing, because it's not like you're in a competition to drop that right to the bottom of the lake. Sorry mate, you'll have to remind me what NCS is. Non-copyright songs, is that what we're going for? I'm not musically talented, so whenever I get... Thank you, yeah, that's what I thought. Yeah, I'm not a musically talented person whatsoever. I've tried, I've always wanted to be. I can play harmonica and I can play guitar, but not to an extent where I'm good. It took a lot of work to get there. So whenever I can get some copyright-free music, I'm very grateful because I just don't have the skill to do it myself. What am I doing here? Oh yeah, we're gonna do Scudback, but not before we do the. Are you just gonna rent out like a basement area, or are you gonna rent like the whole thing out? That's a different ball game entirely. Alright, so for Scudback, I'm gonna play with a couple slightly different sizes. We got this very light olive from Superfly, Scudback midge in 1/8. We got clear Scudback, again in 1/8. This is what I normally use. And then we got some stretch Scudback in a 4mm, which is a little bit wider than the 1/8. I think this might be a little too wide. We're going to stick with the 1/8. Traditionally, when I started tying these, when I was a kid, and I thought it blew my mind. Your whole house, eh? Yeah, that's a different animal, because then you got to either manage it yourself or get a management company to come in. Like, depending how far away you live and if you got the time to do it. You know all about the maintenance part of things. Yeah, let's try and find the end of this stuff. There we go. That wasn't as hard as I thought it was going to be. It looked like it was really tangled. I always typically cut off a lot more than this than I actually need because you don't use a whole lot. So we're going to go with one length. I like to do a hand length. And I'll pop the rest of that back in the package just so it doesn't get all tangled with everything. But yeah, sorry. Back to... Yeah, I have no doubt you will. Sorry, back to story time there. So when I was a little toot, and I watched someone tie this fly for the first time, they were actually using like old fly tying bags like these, and they were cutting strips out of them just with scissors, nothing crazy, and then tying it in on top of the fly, and it just it blew my mind. It just absolutely blew my mind that you could make a fly out of just scrap strips from a Ziploc baggie. And it works perfectly fine. It's not as flexible as this stuff. You can get a nice stretch, and it has a little bit of a rougher texture to it. If you want that rougher texture and you don't want the shine, I don't think it really matters terribly much either way, but if you want that rougher texture, you can just get a little bit of sandpaper. Like a fairly rough grit, like say 80 or 140, something like that. I'm just straightening this out because it's been buggered in the package for a while. Downside to storing it that way, they get all nasty. But it gets stretched anyway. That's just make it a little easier to work with. But yeah, he was just cutting strips out of a sandwich bag and tying them onto his fly, and it just completely blew my mind when I was that age. I was just like, wow. Well, I'm only temporarily feeding it to them. I want it back. They're welcome to chew on it for a bit. Oh, I normally cut it off square like this. And you can go two routes with this one. You can either, a lot of people just do it like that. Oops, sorry, messed up. Let's try that again. Right, well, that's a bad example, but you get the idea. I'm going to be cutting it off anyway. A lot of people just cut it on a 45 angle like that, tie it in, which is perfectly fine. The other option is to make a little triangle on the top and tie it in center. That's the way I've done it for years, so that's what we're going to go with. long as you get it tight and center, it don't really matter. But I always find it easier to center it with a triangle. Like so, this little pointy end. Doesn't have to be anything crazy. Some Scudbacks, when you buy them, have a textured side and a non-textured side. Having the texture side down when you tie it in so that the texture side is up when you flip it is generally a good idea if it does have texture like this one does. Mostly because you're going to be wrapping it with your, most of the time anyway with Scuds, you're going to be doing a segmented wrap on it. And texture helps to grab the wire a little bit, make that job a little easier on you. So when you tie this in, have it on this side of the hook, like your side of the hook. And then as you go to tie it in, and you catch it the first time, as you wrap it, it's going to wrap it around the hook like that. And you'll get it, generally speaking. You'll have to adjust it occasionally. But for the most part, like you can see there, I got it just smack on right center on top. If you try to center it first and then wrap it in place, it'll almost always kick over to the far side. And then you'll have to start over or readjust it. It's a good tip for biots too. Biots typically kind of act the same way. You have a number of options to rib these with. A lot of times if I'm going to be casting them, I'll go with just a embroidery yarn like this green. If it's later in the season, I'll go with like a nice light brown, orange, peach color embroidery thread. You can go with what we're going to be using today is a uni. Is this uni? Or is this ultra wire? Yeah, no, it's ultra wire. Ultra wire is small and olive. You don't have to use colored wire. You can definitely use copper. There's nothing wrong with using copper. This is a new spool, so you have to give me a second to get this all in working order here. They're kind of a bit of a pain the first time you take it apart because it's all wrapped around in there. For ice fishing, I like to use the wire. It adds a little bit of extra weight and a little bit more durability than a thread, or monofilament actually works quite well too. If you got some light green mono or just even regular mono, as long as it's not terribly too thick, you probably want to use like a 3 to 5 pound at the most. So for this one, I'm going to take off a decent bit, hand length and a half maybe. Again, this is a wonderful fly if you're just learning, because it's easy to tie. Only takes a couple materials, and these kind of materials you can source around your house, so you don't have to make a trip to the fly shop. If you want to buy this stuff, the Scudback, in bulk, and you don't want to pay the fly shop prices, the exact same stuff is actually used for sewing. It's typically actually branded as underwear elastic. But if you go to a thread shop or Michael's or what have you, any place that sells fabrics, you can typically find it in a large roll. I don't have any anymore. Unfortunately, it does have a lifespan, and mine got old and brittle and fell apart. But you can buy a roll that'll last you a lifetime for a fairly small amount of money. And it is exactly the same as most of the Scudback you're going to find on the market. And it's a textured Scudback, just like the stuff they got tied in there. But they use it for shirts and other garments, anything where you got like a stretchy seam and you're going to sew it into the seam. So you can save yourself a good bit of money, because one little You know, a pack like this might run you $3 to $5, right? And you're only getting a little bit of it, where you could buy a 100-meter roll of it for almost the same price. Maybe not 100-meter, 100-foot. So for this one, we're going to be using, this might be a little thick, but I'm going to give it a try. It's a olive mohair. Got a good amount of this. The other thing you can use would be dubbing. Got a bunch of dubbing, we'll try some of that too. And you just pick it out after. This would be just a regular, is this Antron? Acrylic. So it's just an acrylic yarn. Okay, we're going to be doing this one. Just looking at it, I might have to separate this. I think it's going to be a little on the big side. We'll separate it and get 2 strands out of it. I think it's a 2-strand mohair. See if it'll let me or not. A little goes a long way with these. I'm feeling like it's going to come apart. Looks like it's going to. Give me a second to fight with this, and I only have to do it once. Well, you look like you want to separate. Sometimes there's 2 strands, but they're kind of interwoven like this, and you'll run into a spot like that where it's woven together. That might be the case in this one. Especially with mohair, it seems to be that way. We'll try this side. Yeah, I think that's exactly what this is. You can see that one's going through the center of the other. You can still pull it apart, you're just going to have to go in between. Yeah, so they're cross-weaved. I'm going to tear apart a long enough strand here. Should have done this before or got it on camera. Who are you, if you don't mind me asking, who are you going with? Shopify or one of those regular guys, GoDaddy? Oh, good. Yeah, I'm glad you're enjoying that. It's good when you can find a good well, mentor, I guess, for lack of a better word to call it, that you can latch onto. Square. Oh, Square, like the billing white square deal that does the credit card stuff. That Square. I heard they're actually pretty decent when it comes to hosting stuff for pricing that. And it all integrates into their payment system, so if you're... Oh, I'm just butchering this, sorry guys. Give me a minute. Maybe separating this wasn't the best idea in the world, but we're gonna go with it. This is a dirty, ugly fly. It doesn't require a lot of finesse. Yeah, that's exactly how they made this. So it's just too loose. One looser than the other yarn strands to make the mohair. Ugh. Oh, pull too hard. Square is the website builder. Yeah, I thought so. Okay, yeah, so it's the same Square I'm thinking of then. That's cool. Yeah, I was looking at theirs. I'm probably going to end up going with, oh, come on, brain, come up with the word. Thing. The word with the stuff. Shopify. Not because I like them more or anything, just mainly because they integrate with YouTube. And YouTube is my jam. So, okay, we're gonna call that good. I don't think I'm gonna get it. any better than that, so we'll just butcher that out. Save that for another fly. Like I was saying, like, you can even take this and just tear it apart and use it like dubbing. When I first started tying these, I was just using just wool and then rubbing it out, which we're going to be doing with this. And I was actually just using an old toothbrush. You don't need anything terribly crazy. Depending how tight your wool is wrapped in. I got the wire. Okay. Sorry, I slowed right down. This is a really simple fly. I should be banging these off. Alright, so we're going to tie this in the length of the body. One thing you can do too, which is really common, is people call them pregnant shrimps, or shrimp baby bodies, or different names like that. And they put a yellow or orange bead or a ball of orange or yellow dubbing right in the center. You've probably seen it if you've seen enough scud patterns. A lot of people think that's the egg sac, but what it's actually a parasite that infects the shrimp. And it's not an egg sac at all. But wives' tales and all that good stuff over the years has come up with it being an egg sac. But it is also a very good attractor for fish. So probably part of the parasites game. Now I'm just going to actually do a half hitch on this. We'll get the bobbin out of the way because this is super hairy and it's going to stick to everything. Yeah, you can do some green dubbing. For ice fishing, I typically find that this olive green works the best. They go a more darker green color in the winter. Around here anyway. The other option is in the summer. They typically go more of a yellow, like a straw color almost, actually. So we're going to do 2 wraps on this. And if you are going to make a thicker section right in the middle there where I got a little bump, is going to be a good spot to do so. Again, because that's where their stomach and where the parasite likes to live. And, ooh, come on now. So we're basically going to do 3 wraps on this guy. 1 down, 1 all the way back, not quite to the tail. And then back again. How thick you make these is totally up to you. You can put some UV resin on the top, like a lot of people like to do, make it look all cool. I'm not going to be doing a pattern like that today. But there are definitely gobs of really cool patterns. Oh yeah, the zombie ants. Yeah, stuff like that with parasites. Some stuff that parasites do is absolutely nut jobs. And that's one of them. I tied this too close to the head, so we'll see if that becomes an issue for me. You do want to leave yourself a little bit of room for a decent head. And I've crowded my head a little bit more than I would have liked to. But I think we'll be perfectly fine. I'm just going to tie it back a bit. As far as yarns go, if you're using a yarn instead of a dubbin like this, a poly yarn, I wouldn't necessarily use an Antron yarn, but you definitely can. But like a poly type yarn over a wool, the strands are going to be a lot longer, and you're going to have a nicer, or even a poly blend with a wool will work typically a little bit better than just a straight wool will, because your fibers are going to be longer. And you're just going to lay the scud back down. This is the fun part. Everyone likes this part. Yeah, just going to lay the scud back down, kind of line it up, keep it straight and a little bit to your side, because again, as you tighten this, like right there, it's going to pull towards you guys. And And that should get you a nice straight top. And again, having the textured side up and the slippy side down will allow your thread and wire and all that to grip a lot better. They kind of like, I'm going to be brushing out the bottom here. You'll see it in a sec once we get the rib wrap on first. So I got about 3 or 4 wraps on this side with this sticking forward. And what I like to do is pull it back. You can cut it off right there, but if you pull it back, because this stuff is so stretchy, if you pull it back and then wrap it like this, you have a 90-degree bend there, and it leaves a little kind of lip or head, for lack of a better way to say it, right here, like a little bulge, and that'll stop your thread from moving forward and sliding as well. Like I said, you do have to be a little careful. I'm just going to move you up a bit so my thread's not going to slide. You have to be a little bit careful about crowding your head on these, just because with the shape of the Scud hook, your thread's going to have a lot more tendency to slide forward. But it's not like you're tying in an overwing and a bunch of extra stuff. But I like to pull it forward and then pull it back, tie it twice like that, because when you pull this to cut it, what can happen a lot of times is if you pull it a little too much, you'll get the hang of it as you're working with your whatever Scud you're working with. But it'll shrink up underneath the thread here once we go to cut it and kind of just disappear. But what can happen if you do that on the first section when you're pulling it forward and you cut it, and if you don't pull it back and do it the other direction, it can pull right through, even though you got that tied down nice and tight as you're fishing it, or just even after you're done tying it. As this relaxes, and it'll slowly pull it through and just pop out. So moving it one way and then the other will lock that in for you and get rid of that problem. Okay, so we're going to take this again, can be thread, can be wire, can be monofilament, doesn't matter, whatever you got kicking around, it's your flavor of the day. And we want to get about 7 segments out of this. So we got 1, 2, and I'm just going to hand wrap it, 3, 4, 5, 7, perfect. Remember, fish can count, so you have to have the exact amount every time, or they won't bite it. Okay, wire's in. Just gonna kink that back and helicopter it. And we got enough there to tie a couple more, so we'll hang on to that. Alright, we'll get a couple half hitches whip finish, and then I'll brush out the legs, which is the second fun part. So yeah, this is a great fly to tie for new guys, because it's fun to tie. You can be super creative with it. You can do all sorts of stuff to make this your own pattern. Like I said, anything from like colored Scud on the top, you can change the body color to anything you want. You can play around different materials, and the cool thing is the fly is just as effective, you know, however ugly you make it. This specific one's called a Lee's Flea, which is basically just a shrimp, a small Scud. The other nice thing about small Scuds is, especially in North America, they're everywhere. There isn't really a body of water around here that doesn't have these. So I can fish this anywhere. And because of that, they're also a staple food source of the fish, and they're there all year. There's not like a season for them. So they work great for ice fishing, they work great for regular fishing, and the fish are always going to key in on them because they're always there. Okay. Yeah, simple little toot. Nothing crazy special. We're not going to throw the head cement on there just yet. I'm going to be brave. Do I got my Where'd my lighter go? There we go. I'm gonna be brave and demonstrate this. Hopefully I don't kill my fly. But one easy way to get rid of all this wispy stuff is to cover it with your fingers so you don't wreck your thread. There we go, like that. And that'll get rid of any wispies that you have, mainly around the head. You don't want them. But all this other stuff is perfectly fine. It's going to simulate legs in a second here. Hey, Pilgrims, good to have you in, mate. Good to see you in, Ethan. Didn't see you come in there for a second. Yeah, sorry. So you have a bunch of different options for brushing this out. Like I said, when I was first starting out, I just used a toothbrush. You don't need anything terribly aggressive. This is just like more like an eyebrow kind of brush. It's really soft. So you can use that and then just pull it down. Like so. Brush it out, make it all nice and buggy. You can go more aggressive than that. If you don't have one of those, most people have one of these kicking around. You do have to be a little more careful with something like that, but just a brass brush. And just gently pull some more fibers out. You can see it's getting a little more leggy underneath. I'm not doing this terribly much because I'm going to demonstrate a bunch of different options here. Now for like Robert and the other hunters and stuff out there, these work a treat, and they're probably my favorite thing to use now. And everyone knows what these are that does hunting. These are to clean your rifles. So you got your brass, or your copper, or you got your nylon. Nylon is incredibly stiff, so it works just as well as the brass. Brass is a little more grippy, or sorry, copper. Keep saying brass. But yeah, having a couple of these on your fly tying desk, they're nice and small. The nice thing about these is you can get like in under the hook. Yeah, they just work. They work a treat, and like you can pick them up like any of your your hunting supply stores. Most of the time, in places like where you're going to be picking up your fly tying stuff anyway. Now, I'm just going to use this to pick out a little bit more of the fibers here. Now you can leave them nice and long and bushy like I'm going to here, or if there's a certain length that you're going for, you can definitely just trim these off too. I don't like to trim mine because I like the wispy look on them, but yeah, there's quite a few people that will take this. Oh, what the hey, let's trim it just so I can give you the idea. You can see there's quite a bit of leg fibers now that are sticking out well past the hook point. So a common thing that a lot of guys will do is just come in here and just trim off the longer bits so it looks a little more uniform. I've never found it makes any difference whatsoever. It will get a little buggier as you fish it, but yeah, super simple. This is roughly the size. You can tie these in all different sizes. Generally the ones I find in rivers are going to be a lot. These guys are size 10. I definitely fish these in a size 8 and 6 and larger, but this would be your standard size for the lakes around here. Most of the scuds are going to be almost smack on that size. And look just like that. A really simple, cute little pattern. And these work a treat for ice fishing. And like I said, the cool thing about this pattern is you can switch that completely up on its head. You can do like fluorescent orange. I do that for ice fishing quite commonly. Orange, pinks, like a cooked shrimp color, works really well. Especially if you're fishing with people that are using like cooked shrimp nearby. Sometimes the fish will key in on whatever your fishing partners are using. Yeah, over the years I've tied these in all sorts of different colors. Everything from blue to Christmas tree green, yellows, reds. Yeah, it's a really cool fly to tie because it's fun, like I was saying. You get a couple different cool little techniques. But yeah, like I said, the first couple times I tied this when I was a little toot and wrapped that Scudback on and folded it over, it was just like mind blowing. It just opened a whole new world for me for different things for bugs. You can. Some people do that with like solar res or different types of UV resins. Uh, it does make it more durable. I've never found a reason to really need to do that. Like even river fishing. Um, yeah, and then like you can put in different stuff. Like you can make this a lot more. Like if you're using dubbing, squirrel works really well. Do I have some? I just tied a bunch of squirrel yesterday, seeing if I got any here. No, in my trash. It's kind of all on the bottom. Are you squirrel? No, you're not squirrel. Oh, yeah, anyway, everyone knows what a squirrel looks like. But it's a really buggy, um, fine but yet slippy fur, so you can cut that up, put it in your dubbing, and the squirrel dubbing makes excellent like little extra legs coming out there. Some people will. I've done a number of different patterns where you can hackle these. You put the hackle on just like you would wrap a woolly bugger, and then trim the top and the sides, and then pull your scud back over. Or if you're just quick and dirty, you can just pull it over and just push all your hackle down. That's another way to do it. It ends up with a lot of legs, and I haven't found that it's any more efficient than going this pattern. So over the years, even though I've fished that one quite a few times with hackle on it, just simple little light legs like this seems to work quite well. Um, yeah, I mean, spray adhesive does work for a lot of different patterns and different things. The problem is it can get really messy and kind of get everywhere. For the people I've seen that use spray adhesive, they'll spray it into something like a box, a cardboard box or something to stop it from flying everywhere, and then get like a toothpick and put it on. It's a little more sticky than other and applies differently than other glues that you'll use for fly tying, so some people do use it. It's also a lot more UV resistant than most. Okay, so I'm just going to rotate that for a second here. Yeah, you can use any wire. You can use, like I was saying, these are two common colors I'll use. There's like a forest green embroidery thread, or this kind of peachy multicolored embroidery thread. A lot of people use something like if you're tying the bigger sizes, you gotta go a bit bigger to use something like a Uniflex. But I've definitely used Uniflex to ribbon. It gives you a really nice kind of segmented look. If you're making nice fat guys where you want the segmentations to really bite in, then that works really well for that. In our case, where did my spool go? In our case, we're just using a ultra wire in olive. But you can use copper, you can use just regular fishing line. Monofilament was what I used for years. I just wrapped it with a really thin, like 2-3 pound test monofilament, and that worked perfectly fine. For these ones, I'm using the wire because it adds just a little bit more weight to it. It makes it a little bit more durable. Yeah. The other thing that a lot of people will do on these is to put a layer of, like, say, Sally Hansen's on top. Organic UV, if you're the UV type, you can put the UV on, and that'll give it a nice shiny hard cap on the top. It adds a lot of durability and gives it a cool look, but in my personal opinion, it's to catch the fisherman, not the fish. I've never had any difference in whether it was whether I caught more fish with it with a cap on the top with varnish or not. Yeah, it looks really cool, but yeah. So that's Lee's Flea tied on a size 10 scud hook and a heavy wire. It's got a dark, medium olive body, which is a mohair, which is brushed out after being ribbed with a olive UTC, or sorry, an olive ultra wire, and a clear 1/8 Scudback pulled over top. Simple fly, works a treat in all sorts of rivers, lakes all year round. This particular color is excellent for ice fishing, so I'm tying up a bunch of these. And yeah, it's a fun fly. It's a great little fly for people who are just starting to learn. You got a few different techniques there. It's really hard to mess it up. These can be quick, dirty, and ugly and still catch a ton of fish. So excellent little thing. You should have multiple of these different colors in your box. And play with the colors. You can do everything from red, orange, blue, green. Doesn't matter. Whatever your heart desires. Yep, and that is the Lee's Flea, a type of scud for the northwestern Canada and US. All the way down the coast to California, basically. They're everywhere. We'll get a few more of these done up. I lost one. Come on, buddy. It's always horrible when you drop stuff in your trash can, because then you pull it out like that. Oh, I can't recall the name of that one off the top of my head, but that's a pretty fly. I had a lot of fun tying these. Yeah, good to have you in, Doug. And always good to have Trudge in too. See you, Villa. Thanks for dropping in, mate. Always a pleasure. Oh, so we'll get back at this. I'm going to yap a little less and tie a little more. Oh, it is a scud for sure. It's a type of scud. It's a scud hook, so you're not wrong. But Lee's Flea is the specific, branded fly name for this one. See if I got anything written down on when it was created here. Yeah, it was created in 1972 by Lee Gomes from Spokane, Washington. He actually created a lot of simple fishing patterns. He ran a guiding and shop up there for a few years. Yeah, Lee's Fleas is Lee Gomes is the one who originally tied this one, but I mean it's such a simple pattern. I'm sure people before him tied very similar ones. I think he was probably the one that included the Scudback on it. Where did my Scudback go? I don't really want to cut another piece because I just cut that one. There it is. Alright, so again, I'm just going to cut a small triangle on the top. I need to sharpen these scissors, they're getting dull again. Which is actually perfect timing. I was talking to, was it Sharpen Right? Yeah. He's another YouTuber on here that does knife and scissor sharpening. There's all kinds of sharpening. That's his job, and he does live YouTubes and lots of long form content. But was yabbering with him on a live forum, and I need to do a video on how to sharpen fly tying scissors and other fly tying tools. It always irks me when I see people tossing like $60, $70 pair of scissors, or even cheap scissors for that matter, when you can just sharpen them yourself. So yeah, I need to get on that and make a long form video on how to properly sharpen some fly tying scissors. And since mine are getting on the dull side, it's a good time to do that. And I've had these, like, I can't remember who it was. There's one tire on here that says that he throws his scissors out every 2 to 3 months. And it's like, dude, I do a lot of tying. These things are years and years and years old. I've sharpened them so many times that they don't have the serrations really much on them anymore. There's a little bit left. See if I can get the angle right so you can see them. There you go. You can see it's nice and smooth. And then the only serrations that are left are kind of in the gut and just a little bit on the tip. These are Dr. Slicks. I'm not, not sponsoring them over anyone else or anything for any reason. But I will say I've tied thousands of flies with them, and they haven't really caused me any problems, and they're comfortable and they fit my fingers well. And I think that's the most important thing, is just finding a pair of scissors that fits your hand well. Some people got big meaty sausage digits and they need something with a nice big loop. Some people got regular fingers, but you want something that's really comfortable in your hand. The scissor itself, as long as the metal is of decent quality and a hold an edge, that's really all that matters. And that it's straight and you got a small tip on it. If you're looking for like an entry level good pair of scissors that you can just pick up at, say, Walmart, these Fiskars with these little tips, I think they call them like Acura tip or something. Does it even say on it? No, it just says Fiskars on it. I think it was like Acura tip or something along those lines anyway, was the brand on it, or the model of Fiskars. I mean, you see they have it ground down. These ones don't line up. I mean, you can look in the packages, but you can see on these, the tips don't quite line up as well as they should. They're off a little bit. I mean, these run like brand new in a package, 12 to 20 bucks, depending on where you're picking them up. But I'll use these for more of my cutting fur and cutting larger stuff and wire and that kind of thing, because the blades are nice and thick, so you can handle some beefy things with these. But for the money, for $12, I mean, you can tie and cut almost anything with these. Are they going to last your lifetime? Probably not. Yeah, Loom makes a really good pair of a lot of different things, but I don't have a Loom scissors. I do like their stuff though. K-Fish has a lot of Loon stuff, and I would definitely use their scissors. I've seen quite a few of them in the fly shops. So we're getting sidetracked here. I said I was going to talk less than time, or and end up talking more time. Yeah, let's get our wire tied next. And for these, I do find it's generally better, besides tying in your, you don't want to tie in your Scudback the whole length of the body, but tying in like your wire and your, what am I doing, dude? Not sure what I was thinking there. I was clearly hanging over a lot. Yeah, tying in your wire and your body material the full length of the Scud is a good idea in this case. Actually, I think we'll switch it up on this one, and instead of using the mohair, we'll just go with dubbing, so you guys can see a different way to do it. What dubbing do I have that will work for this color? We can go with this yellow here is probably the kind of yellowy olive is going to be slightly closer to what I'm looking for. This is actually seal fur with some polar bear mixed in. Seal fur actually works great because it has a translucent quality, so it does work really well for scuds because their legs are fairly translucent. But I think this one here is a, really should have labeled these, but I think this one's an antron and some rabbit. Antron's kind of like a synthetic yeah, that looks like antron. These work a treat. You just use a crochet hook, and you can pull it out of your container without making a huge mess. Yeah, this one's a little bit more on the yellowy olive side. Oh, I make most of it. I mean, I'll occasionally buy dubbing, but this is one I got just kicking around here that I haven't. Oh no, this is black. But I love mixing up my own dubbing. Like, you can mix different materials, mix different colors. Like, the options are endless. You can add in flash. Alright. So we got those two tied in. So this is going to be more, like, this color would be more something I would fish more in spring. Because as it gets warmer out, they get that lighter yellow body, and they'll get almost like a straw yellow come like late spring, summer. This is a fairly long fiber dubbing too, so add a good bit of goop to this. Alright, just put it down. I'll see where I put it down. There we go. I was matching into my mouse pad. Okay, so typically for this stuff, I'll add a pinch like that just on here when it's really long like this, and then I'll add a bit more to get a thicker noodle in the middle. Now, I already know just by looking at this, once I get this spun up and brushed out, that these fibers are going to be too long for our legs, so I'm going to be trimming it. But we already did that. You can see it's not a big deal. This might actually have some seal in it. I don't recall. It was a while ago when I mixed this one up. I probably got double the dubbing I need on there, but I'm going to pull it off when we get closer to the end here. Yeah, if you're using dubbing like this, don't worry about it being messy. Don't worry about it being kind of all over the place. You can fix all that up after. I'm just going to get my my bobbin cradle out of the way there. And then we start wrapping. The nice thing about dubbing is you can, just like with the other body options, you can make this, you know, whatever thickness you want, whatever color you want. You can mix in, like we were talking about, the little orange band. You can slide a bead on. A lot of people do that for that egg section in the middle, which is not actually an egg. Gotta be a little fussy here and just tighten that up a bit. So the cool thing about ear hair is you already got the ear wax on it, so it makes excellent dubbing. It's like pre-waxed. Okay, I'm just going to... I want it a little thicker than that, but I don't want to necessarily... I'm not sure if I'll use the whole thing up or not. We'll figure it out here. There we go. That's a little more even, like that. As I don't worry about... I don't want to wrap too many wraps in one spot. I want a channel there. There we go. Yeah, it doesn't have to be anything crazy. So don't worry about all this extra stuff, because it's either going to get pushed into a spot you want it, or you're going to deal with it after. Like this little bit that's flipping up top, I'm going to pin that down. It'll become legs on the other side. I wonder if I did put some seal in here. This sure looks like... Well, there's one way to find out. A lot of good antron is like really, really close to seal and polar bear hair, so it can be really hard to tell. But if it's hair, it won't burn. It'll burn, it won't melt. Yeah, so that is actually hair. Interesting. If it's antron, it'll melt up like mono. Huh. I'm not 100% sure if I used seal, polar bear, or rabbit fur from the feet of the snowshoe hair works really good for these two. This guy is just a little on the long side, even if I pull him over, so we're gonna pull him out a bit. And I can feel it in my fingers now. I got the textured, like I was talking about, there's a textured side and a clear side. And yeah, I got it backwards. That's why it's slipping left and right on me here. It'll fish just fine, but like I said, if you have the textured side up, or sorry, texture side, yeah, I got the smooth side up. I want the texture side up. It just makes life easier to tie it in. I pull that towards me a hair, and then when I tie it down, it will not do what I'm expecting it to. 1 second. Buddy. It's got a little kink there. 1 second. Get this fixed. There's a little kink there from the package, which is causing it to kind of fold on me. There we go. Hold it, hold it, don't let go, hold it. There we go. That was a lot more annoying and harder than it needed to be. So again, you want to get 3 or 4 wraps. Shorten your thread up so you don't look like a goofball. And once you tie that in forward to 3 or 4 wraps, you want to take it, pull it back, and then do it again. And that's like a locking wrap. What I like to do is leave that first bit Yeah, you want to get that first bit and then just a little bit up from where it folds over, and then make your head there. That'll stop it from pulling back through when you cut it off. Now I can just lightly pull back, and then when I cut it off, it'll disappear and pull up under the thread. If you're using like sandwich bag material or anything that's a little more plasticky, you're going to want to stay on top. I like to see this more on my side before I wrap the wire than directly on top like that. Just because, again, like I said, as you're wrapping it, you just got to be mindful that your wire is going to pull it the direction that you're wrapping the wire. Okay, we'll get the wire wrapped in now. I'm going to counter wrap this way because it wants to. Seems to want to go the other direction. The other thing you can adjust here to personal preference is how much tension you're putting on your wire as you're wrapping. The more tension you put will make bigger segmentations. Again, personal preference. I've never found it made any difference whatsoever. As long as there is segmentations, the segmentations are important because the fish do key in on segmentations for sure. But as long as they're there and they're noticeable and there's a contrast. Yeah, I'd used, I don't have any on hand here, but they had these, it's kind of hard to describe the color, but it's kind of like a milky brown gray color. For these utility gloves I had, and they're excellent. They make a good like worm body. They make all sorts of good scud material. You may want to stay away from the blue nitrile gloves because that'll look weird, but anything else would be fine. Alright, so let's get a couple half hitches in there. My half hitch tool went, there it is. Sorry, my stuff's just not landing where I normally put it, so my brain's having a second to try and find it. You don't need big heads on these two. Some people will tie them with like a head similar to a they do have a decent, like they do have a head on them. They are a crustacean after all. But some people will tie them with a rather large head, and for me, that's not the style. I like to go with like a medium head that's either smaller or slightly bigger than the body, so it has a nice continuous move. So they look more like a grub. But you will get people tying these with a much larger, darker head. In my opinion, it looks closer to more like a waxworm than it does a scud when you go that route. But again, personal preference. So if you want a big, gnarly head on it, you can go ahead. You can go ahead with your big gnarly head. So we'll whip finish that now. I get about 5 wraps, just kind of clean up any little hollows I got in my thread there. Yeah, and there's nothing wrong with doing that way. It's just my personal preference. I like to have a kind of neater, you know, just so it transitions into the body better. I don't think I have. Again, this is another scenario where I wish I had a picture of the actual bug we're tying. I need to start getting a collection of those together on my computer so I can pop a picture up in the stream so people can see. Because people might not be familiar with what an actual scud looks like. Like to me, they're everywhere. And whenever I clean a fish out, or whatever, it's, you know, their belly's full of them. So I'm familiar with them. I don't think much of it, but we get people in here from all around the world, and there's lots of places where they might not have any idea what a scud looks like, right? So when I'm out this year actually fishing and stuff, I'll start taking more of my own photos of invertebrates and such. I'm gonna have to be careful because this is hair, the amount that I brush this out, because I can start pulling out chunks. This might be a little bit of an aggressive brush for this, to be honest. One thing I've done actually that does seem to work really well, is if you get a bunch of these, like the smaller, like these guys, mallard breast feathers that are kind of on the side, like the flank of the breast, these little ones, or even grouse, but anything that has this kind of mottled, segmented, mottled coloration to it, you can just tie in just a little whiff of them up front, because their main legs are quite, much larger and more pronounced on the front. So you can tie just a little clump going back, and that works really well too. I've had some good success with that. Alright, so let's trim that off. We got some longer fibers there that are just a little too party happy, so get rid of those. But yeah, that's kind of where you want it. You want it. Their legs aren't huge. I mean, they are pronounced, but they're going to be roughly within that gap of your hook. So you want to keep them kind of in that area. And it's a good idea to trim these. Any cleanup you do it before you put your head cement on, so your head cement doesn't end up with a bunch of fuzz in it. There we go. That one actually turned out pretty good too. Happy with that one. So doing the same thing, that would be a dub body. Yeah, Lee's Flea. Nice simple pattern. It's a lot of fun. It's nice because it's really like you're not tying in an overwing. You're not sizing materials. You're just simply adding them to the hook and whatever you have kicking around. And it's a very forgiving pattern in that form, that you don't really have to, you don't have to have your overwing the right size. You don't have to add legs. The buggier and uglier they look, generally the better they work. Like a lot of things. I'm gonna put just a drop of Sally Hansen's on this one, just for kicks and giggles, to give it a little shinier head. Like I said, it's really common for people to epoxy or solar res the back on it. Basically just covering that with your nail polish or solar res or UV or whatever you have for glue to make a thick scud. They do have a nice armored top to them, just like any shrimp does. To me, I just haven't had any different luck with that, and I think it honestly just makes a pretty fly that catches the fisherman more than it catches the fish. Oh, we'll just rotate that, let it dry up here. Yes, everyone, submarine. Please, submarine. Yeah, feel free to subscribe and like the channel. Thanks, Robert. Didn't mean to point that out, but it's funny. Alright, so we'll go over the fly here a bit as it dries up. Hey, so that is a Lee's Flea. It is a type of scud. It's tied on a size 10 in this case, heavy scud hook. It has I'm pretty sure that is seal fur and a light olive green body, wrapped with some ultra wire, small in olive, and a clear scudback across the top. Really simple fly. It works a treat for ice fishing any time of the year, since scuds are in the water all year. You can fish this anytime. Typically, you'll get darker colors in the winter and fall, and you'll get lighter colors as it comes out into the spring. So this will go into more of a straw yellow color as you come into mid-spring, late spring, and fall, or in summer. Yeah, you can tie these up in all sorts of different color combinations for your heart's content to have the whole box full. Excellent little things, fun to tie, great for new tires to learn some simple wrapping and body skills. Excellent little fly. Again, it's a Lee's Flea, originally tied in 1972 by Lee Gnomes from Spokane, Washington. That calls for some tea. Cheers. Did that on porpoise. But yeah, originally when I tied these, like I said, it blew my mind when I seen someone wrap Scudback on one for the first time. I was just like, what kind of wizardry is that? Mm. Yeah, I just do a record clip when I spin those. I'm sure you've noticed that. Um, I can't seem to get the live highlight thing to work properly for me, so I'm just not using it. It's a cool feature though. I wish it worked better. It always seems to clip too far forward or too far back. It gives me like a weird timed clip, so I just do it manually. But makes it nice and easy for some nice shorts for people that. The basic idea is if you missed out on the stream, you can still catch what was going on. Okay, there, got some tea in me. We'll keep going here. Yeah, since I was saying you can do these like all sorts. See, that one's a little bit on the darker side. That's why it's nice to have several colors of these, because um, especially up here, if you're ice fishing, there's so many of these, they'll swim right up into your ice fishing hole, and they'll just be swimming around in your hole. So you can easily, yeah. And it's a really, like, you can get any yarn you have laying around. Like I said, wool works. The only downside of wool is that the strands for the legs won't be as long as if you're using like a fur dubbing like this last one, or if you're using an Antron, the fibers are just longer. So in that case, if you find if you're using wool and it's a little on the short side and you just can't brush it out well enough, then use that, use like I said, and we'll do that on this one here. We'll do that on this one. We'll add some legs to the front. And that does seem to actually help them key in a lot better on it. Because their main front, I almost want to say mandibles, but it's their legs they use to grab food and to pull themselves along and that kind of thing. Are a lot more substantial than all the other legs that they have along their body that they use for swimming and breathing. It's actually part of their breathing apparatus. Where did I put my thread? There we go. So yeah, for this one we'll tie on a few little legs in the front just so you can see the difference. Yeah, if you're finding like whatever you're using for the body material just isn't brushing out well, just throw some legs in the front and then you're good. You're done. Don't need to complicate it. Sorry, I got sidetracked. Was starting my little story time there and then got sidetracked with leg thoughts. Yeah, when I was first tying these when I was younger, before I knew about Scudbacks and it was kind of a thing, I would just use just kind of like it wasn't called ultra chenille back then, but it was just a smaller, thinner chenille, and just do a thin chenille body and then wrap it with hackle and just cut the hackle back. So it was almost like a woolly worm. But that was my original shrimp pattern for years. Okay, we got our thread base on there. I'll wrap our wire again. Again, this is an aught 10. And it is lead wire. It's not lead free. If you're looking for a good source of, actually here I should have actually had that back. My bad. I should have had my thread behind the wire wrap. Just makes it easier to wrap the wire on so you're not bumping into your bobbin. If you're looking for a good source of lead-free wire and you're into the lead-free camp, don't really, either way, it doesn't matter whether you're using lead or lead-free, in my opinion. But if you're looking for a lead-free substitute, just tin solder works awesome for that. The downside is you have to find tin solder, and ironically, the cheaper stuff is generally better. You want to find tin solder that is non-rosin core, which is kind of the hard part to find. But a lot of times, if it's really cheap solder, it doesn't have rosin in it. And the rosin's used to help with oxidation in that it helps to clean the surface and act as a flux for your solder when you're soldering items together. So a lot of solder will come with literally a core of gel kind of paste that's in the solder, and if you use that to wrap your flies, it'll work fine for the weight and it'll wrap on there fine. But the rosin is also extremely caustic and will kind of rot your fly from the inside out. So don't make that mistake. Ask me how I know. But if you can find some rosin core that is, some non-rosin core wire, you can have it a lot cheaper than you can buy fly tying lead or lead-free wire. You can get it in almost any thickness, diameter you can dream of. And it's much, much cheaper, and you can buy it in bulk. So what I've found is those ones that almost look like, the cheaper ones that almost look like they come in like a clear pencil. For lack of a better way, it's like a tube, it's all wrapped up in there as like a spiral. Those ones work really well. Okay, let's get the texture on the right side this time. Sometimes it can be hard to see which side's textured. Okay, that side is. Alright, so we want texture side down, slippy side up. So when we flip it over, the texture side will be up. One thing that works a treat for this too, if you don't have, everyone's got Ziploc bags, who doesn't have a Ziploc bag? But if you don't have access to Scudback or later, thanks for dropping in, eh? If you don't have access to Scudback for some reason, you can make this stuff out of almost anything. One thing that works really well for this as well, and is nice and durable, and also works really well for wings on, say, dragonfly nymphs, or not nymphs, the blue dragonflies or some stoneflies, mayflies, is the, for lack of a better way to say it, when you go and buy deli meat Some places will use like a wax paper in between your deli meat when they put it in the bag, but some places will use this opaque plastic. I'm sure you've all seen it, depending on where you shop, right? Some places use one, some use another, some use a clear one. But if you can find the semi-opaque stuff, it makes really nice wings. It's incredibly durable for just a thin sheet of plastic, and it makes really good scudbacks as well. And being that it's just slightly opaque, it doesn't have that like the shininess of this, like a plastic bag. This will work. You can even just cut this bag up. But the Scuds don't have this kind of reflective, shiny quality to them. They're more of a dull, like this that we're tying in. So, you know, if you're trying to be accurate, you can use either. But yeah, if you can find some of that, just ask them for an extra couple sheets if you don't want to clean it after. And then, yeah, makes an excellent fly tying material. You can get gobs of it out. Just take some scissors and cut strips out of that. Cost you nothing. What do I want to do for body on this? We're going to stick with that, stick with the green. Or go back to the yellow, or go back to the... let's go back to the... let's go back to the mohair. This has some really nice long fibers in it. Sometimes when you get mohair, it's got really short fibers. I got a lot of hairline branded mohair. I'm sure they don't actually make it themselves, but did I tie in the wire? I did not tie the wire in, so let's do the wire first. Getting ahead of myself here. Do I got enough? Hey, yeah, maybe. I think we got enough for one more fly out of this one. There we be. I'm gonna try and... come on, buddy. I was just gonna say I was gonna try and get that in my material clip, was it? Come on. You wanna behave yourself, right? There we go. One of my many material clips on my vise. Sorry, sidetracked again. We were gonna do, mohair. I go just up from where I'm going to tie my head in so we don't end up with a lump. And it's going to bounce on me, so I'll try that again. There we be. Oh, no worries, mate. I'm perfectly happy to have new people in here. That's one of the things we enjoy the most, having new people come and hang out with us. So yeah, Florida fishing, good to have you, mate. What got me into fly fishing or fly tying? That'll be two different stories. So I started fly tying long before I started fly fishing. Because for years and years and years, when I was a little toot, fly fishing, what got me into fly fishing was I was walking back from school, and of course we had to walk uphill both ways about 5 kilometers in the snow. But yeah, in reality I did have to walk, how many kilometers was it? 3 kilometers to get to school every day. And we walked through several parks to get there. And one of the parks I walked through there was an older gentleman, and he was casting out in the field, and I've never seen anyone do this before, and it was just mind-blowing to me. It's like, what are you doing, man? And I just sat there and watched him for a bit, and it was early morning, it was in the fall. Yeah, Florida Fishing, good to have you in, mate. Really, we're here most mornings. We have a really tight little crew, and we're all here to help you with fly tying / fishing of any sort, really, and just come hang out and enjoy. Sorry, got sidetracked on my story there. But yeah, he was casting in the fall, and it was like right around that time where the lakes and the rivers were icing up, and fishing was pretty much done. And I could, like, it took a minute for me to stop and think and be like, what is this guy doing? He's out in the middle of a grass field, like a soccer field, and it's all kind of muddy, and it's got like a little bit of snow patches here and there, and it's like the exact opposite of what you'd expect to see someone doing in the fall in Canada. And it's like he was maybe a couple 100 feet from the river. And it's like, dude, why are you casting in the middle of a field when the river is like right over there? And I just sat there and kind of watched him for a bit. And then he kind of noticed I was watching him, and he calls me over. And he explains to me that he's practicing casting. And I was just like still, my brain is kind of like, what are you doing? Why would you practice casting when the river is right over there and you could be fishing? It's still open water, but it's, fall and everything's icing up, and it's kind of the nastier time of year to fish because it's cold and everything. But my brain was still like, okay, well, if you want to fish, just go over there and fish, you know? And just watching him cast and having those big loops floating in the air. Because up until that point, I've never fly fished. I just did all my fishing with my flies with a spinning reel, regular spinning setup. And I've seen other people cast and other people fly fish, but I've never seen someone practice fly casting and fly fishing. And that whole thing just opened up that idea to me that, fly fishing takes some work. It takes a little bit of practice. It takes a little bit of skill. It's something that you can practice in the off season and be proud of, when spring comes along. And yeah, that's my first interaction with fly fishing, was that old gentleman. I never saw him again after that, so I don't know if he was not from the area. Never seen him at any of my fishing places. He was super friendly, and he explained what he was doing and how it all worked, and the back cast and the 10 and 2 kind of positions and all that good stuff. But for that year, have a good day, Robert. Thanks for stopping in, mate. Yeah, we got snow too. We had 2 dumps of about 2 feet, so I've been shoveling for, feels like days. But yeah, for that Christmas, I asked my parents to get me a fly rod so I could start practicing. And I got a bargain bottom of the barrel. I still have the thing. Fly rod and line combo, and it was like this kind of hay yellow, straw yellow. It didn't have a brand. It was just from Kmart. It was not anything special. There was not a stitch of metal on the whole thing. The whole thing was plastic, even the guides. It shows you the quality level. But my parents didn't know if I was actually going to be into it or not, right? So they found the cheapest solution for line and rod. And I fished the heck out of that thing. I still have it. I still use it. It is not a good rod. It has all the flexibility of a broom but it's my first rod, and I will always remember my first fly rod. I mostly just use it for trolling and stuff now, where the flexibility rod really don't matter any. But I like to troll it in my canoe. There you go. That's the story of how I started fly fishing. I was tying flies for years before that. But yeah, I would just throw them on my spinning rod. I didn't see any reason to learn fly fishing, and I could just throw it on a regular casting rod and just have some split shots and get it out there. Yeah, after seeing that gentleman practicing his casting, it just opened up a whole new world for my brain on that. Hey, I'll get some half hitches in there before we brush this out. So hopefully that answers your question there, Florida. Hope you don't mind me calling you Florida. It'd just be easier for me. Yeah, you definitely don't need an expensive rod to learn. I know that a lot of people will shy away from recommending people getting a cheap combo rod, but honestly, a lot of the cheap combo rods that you get nowadays in shops are leaps and bounds better than what they used to be, and a lot of them are even graphite and stuff, you know, for like $60 to $80. And those are leaps and bounds better than like the good rods we had in the 80s that were all fiberglass. So if people were learning on that kind of material then, yeah, there's nothing wrong with you learning on it now. And one other benefit too, yeah, that's very true. For Florida though, you guys have a lot of different options, so it would really depend on like the species that you want to go after down there. Like if you're going to be doing more, you know, out in tide pools and out in the shoals and things like that, you can hook into some bigger stuff. So you'd probably want to be like an 8 weight or higher. If you're going to be doing more, you know, tributaries and streams and stuff that are, or ponds and that, out in the marsh areas, then you're going to get into a lot smaller stuff too, right? So if you're getting into the smaller things, crappie, bluegill, what have you, then you're going to want something around a 5 or less for the weight of the rod. You can definitely catch everything on a 6 to a 7 or an 8, but the higher up on the number you go, the basically the beefier the rod is, right? So it would be the same as if you were catching a trout on a massive trolling rod compared to an ultralight setup. So it just makes it a little more on the fun side, so you're not just winching the thing in, and it just makes everything a little more balanced, for lack of a better way to put it. Oh, I forgot I was gonna put legs on this. That's why I tied that. So I'm sorry, guys. My bad. That's why I tied this body so tightly, because I was planning on adding legs in the front. Oh, I'll have to do that on the next one. So I'm gonna aggressively pull some legs out here. I'm trying not to hit my Scudback too much with these so I don't wreck it, but I did mean to to tie in some legs. That's why I tied the body a little more tighter on this one. My bad, totally forgot about that. I got talking too much. Now, brushing it out is a fun part of it. It's almost like painting. There we go. Okay, so we got a couple that are a little on the long side, so I'm just going to trim those. You know, I like to trim them about where the hook point is. So just pull that up. But yeah, I mean, I'm about as far removed as I can get from Florida as far as the fishing style that you guys have down there. Not that it can't be helpful for you whatsoever, because fish are fish. But if you're looking for specific, like an outfit, I just find a local shop and just see what they have, what they would recommend that you start with. I'm assuming it's going to be a 4 to 5 weight if you're going to be catching a lot of, you know, shoal fish and that kind of thing. But if you're going for the bigger stuff, you know, if you have access out to the ocean and, you know, you're fishing off of a pier or dock, that would be a whole different ball game, right? Then you're getting into your streamers and stripers and that kind of thing. And yeah, like we touched on too, if you wanted to just use the spinning gear that you already have, there's nothing stopping you from tying this on like a regular hook, putting a split shot in front of it. A lot of people that fish that method will use a clear bobber, those ones that have the little stopper in them that you can fill up with water so you can adjust your weight. And those work a treat for getting it the right, you know, right amount of weight so you can cast it out. And then just having that in front of your fly. So you basically would have your fly, you'd have, oh, I don't know, 1-2 feet of leader, and then have a little split shot, and that'll just help balance things out a little bit. And by split shot, little split shot, I just mean the little guys, like the, I don't know the size on them, but you know, the size of like a jig head, so would that be 1/8 of an ounce or so? And then have your float in front of that, so the whole thing's going to be several feet long. You can, excuse me, you can adjust your float by adding water or moving it up and down. And then there's nothing, you know, nothing stopping you from throwing flies on the gear you already got. And once you start nailing fish on stuff you're tying yourself, you'll be a lot more motivated to go in the shop and drop some money on a fly rod. That is a totally different ball game. So there we have a Lee's Flea. This is tied on a size 10 scud hook on heavy wire. It's got a mohair light olive body with a clear Scudback pulled over top, ribbed with some ultra wire in dun olive in medium, or sort of small. And this is an excellent little pattern, super simple, fun to tie, and it's around all times of the year. So it's great for ice fishing, it's great for spring, summer. Typically color variants are going to be darker in the winter, so you're going to get this color to a darker green and a brown, and then in the summer you're going to work your way up into the lighter colors like your straws and your yellows and that sort of thing. But you can tie them whatever your heart's content. You can have them orange, you can have them red, you can have them anything you got laying around for attractor patterns as well. That's a Lee's Flea. Really simple little scud pattern. Excellent for anywhere in the Northwest. And good to have you in Florida fishing. Hopefully that answered some questions for you. If you have any other questions, comments, accusations, feel free to throw them out there. We can chew on it a bit before we tie it up for the morning. I'm going to get ready to get some breakfast, get my morning going here. I just want to thank everyone for coming out and hanging out with me this morning. It's been a good tying session. Really enjoyed these little Lee's Fleas. Simple little fun pattern. Pop you in here. Where's the other ones we got going? I personally would. A lot of people are not going to give you that recommendation. A lot of people are going to tell you to go, mid-range to higher end right away. Like I said, I still have my original rod from when I was like, 8 years old, right? And I still use it. So like a cheaper rod, especially nowadays, the cheap rods are leaps and bounds better than what they used to be. That being said, they are still a cheap entry-level rod, so it's no different than any other gear that you're going to buy, right? Like if you start off with a cheap vise, you're going to want to upgrade to a better vise if you tie hundreds or thousands of flies. But it's just like with fly tying. If it serves the purpose and it gets you out doing what you want to do, then it's served its purpose. So if you get a cheap rod and you're going to go fishing twice as often with that cheap rod because now you can afford gas to go fishing, it makes a lot more sense than buying an expensive rod, being broke, and being scared to use the thing. That's the other thing. If you could easily drop $1,000 on a fly rod, reel, and line combo, no problem. To get a really nice setup that's going to last you a good part of a lifetime. But you're going to be terrified to step on that thing. You're going to be terrified to leave it on a dock. What happens if you backcast and drop it in the water? These things happen, especially when you're learning. So in my opinion, it's better to start off with a cheap combo that gives you a weighted combo. So there are these weights in fly fishing. So the weight is basically the thickness, the weight, and the length of the line, the weighted fly line that you're going to be casting. And that is supposed to be balanced with not only the rod, but your reel. So when you're first starting out, when you buy a kit, all the weights should be even and the same. Maybe not to the best, standards, but it'll be good enough that it'll work for you. If you just go into any fishing shop and just buy some random line, buy a random reel, buy a random rod, because you like all three of them, and then slap them together, you might not be in the best shape. So for your first rod, I really recommend, just going and getting a kit rod. You'll see them everywhere. They'll be in Walmart. They'll be in, I'm in Canada, so Canadian Tire. Any of your regular haunts for fishing gear. If you go to a fly shop, that'll be one step up. If you don't mind dropping the money and you don't mind the chance of breaking or damaging your rod, then investing a little bit more if you think it's something you're going to be into is perfectly fine as well. But I just, like, for a lot of people that I see fishing, especially when they're starting, having something like a $50 rod, if you drop it on the dock, if you step on it by accident, because they're, most people are used to a 6-foot spinning rod, right? And if you get like a 10-12 foot fly rod, it's twice the size of what you're used to. So it's really easy to bang it up against a car or a boat, or it's just a little more unwieldy, right? You're not used to it, so it's really easy to damage. So you're going to cry a lot less if you damage a $50 to $60 rod combo compared to damaging a $3,000 to $1,000 rod combo. And the benefit to having a better quality setup when you start is the rod and having everything nicely balanced. It'll do a lot of the casting for you. So it's a lot similar to, like, saying if you have like, I mean, you got a fishing channel, I'm assuming, so I'm assuming you do more spinning, maybe bait casting. So it would be the same as if you had like a cheap spinning reel and a cheap spinning rod, and you go to cast it out. You can do all the motions, you can learn to use your bail, you can cast it out, the same as you would with an expensive setup. But the difference is the distance, that you're going to get and how smooth and all that action and everything feels. And when you hook into something, the feedback that you get through the rod and how that whole thing feels is going to be a lot less, on a $20 spinning setup than on a several $100 spinning setup. So the differences are very, very similar. And having that feedback on a more expensive setup will help you learn faster, because it just feels better. You get more feedback, not only from the casting, but from when you get a fish. So that would be the benefit of getting a more expensive system, is you'll get that feedback and you'll improve quicker. And it'll just feel better, just like with any other gear, right? Generally you get what you pay for. But my personal opinion for anyone that wants to start out is just get whatever you have access to, whatever you can afford, cheap to medium-ish range, full kit that comes together, and just get out and use it. Just throw it in the water, or find a soccer field like we were talking about earlier and just practice casting there. Because when you're starting out, you're going to knot your lineup. You're going to go through leaders like crazy with wind knots, because you're going to make mistakes. So there's no point in spending $20, $30 on a really nice tapered leader when you're going to probably chew it up within a day or two, and it'll end up being like 4 feet long because you have to keep cutting the end off. But yeah, hopefully that I kind of got you rambly there for you, but hopefully that makes sense. I would not recommend going and getting an expensive set for your first rod. I would recommend getting a cheap one. I wouldn't recommend spending more than, say, $150 for the whole kit and caboodle for your first rod. I don't see a reason for it. I think you'll be perfectly fine with just a basic set. And hopefully you do, man. We're here almost every morning. Don't go live every single day, but I do try. And generally around this time frame. Pacific Standard Time, I normally start about 5:30 in the morning. I'll go for about an hour or two till I'm ready for my morning. But yeah, good to have you in. Hopefully you join the crew. Got a lot of good people that stop in here, and they're more than happy to help you with any questions you got as well. We're really chill and do our thing. But yeah, I'd recommend, just talk to a shop. Of course, the fly shop's going to try and sell you on a little bit more expensive gear. But really, you already clearly have a fishing channel, so you may be into spending a little more. Have a good morning, all. Hopefully that helps. Thanks for stopping in. Enjoyed it. Good tying session.